Hello and welcome everyone. Today we're jumping headfirst into some of India's most fascinating sacred mysteries. We're talking about those incredible places and events where science and faith seem to collide, creating stories that are just, well, they're absolutely captivating. And that really is the big question, isn't it? If science can offer a perfectly logical, rational explanation for something, does that take away from the wonder? Can it still be a miracle? That's the lens we're going to be looking through today. So let's dive in. All right, here's our roadmap. We're going to start with some incredible tales of divine protection, like an unshakable shield. Then, we'll look at moments when nature itself seems to bend its own rules. After that, we'll get into the feeling of a divine presence, and we'll wrap it all up by asking why these beliefs are so incredibly powerful. Okay, so let's get one thing straight right off the bat. The goal here isn't to prove or disprove anything. Not at all. It's about trying to understand how two totally different viewpoints, the scientific and the spiritual, can look at the exact same event and walk away with completely different but equally powerful truths. So let's kick things off with these amazing stories of what you might call divine protection. We're talking about sacred places that somehow survived against absolutely impossible odds, leaving everyone just shaking their heads in wonder. Our first stop is the unbelievable story of the Tanot Mata temple. So picture this. It's 1965, during the Indo-Pak War. This pretty remote temple is right in the middle of a war zone and it's getting pummeled. But in the middle of all that chaos, something truly mind-boggling happened. And the scale of this, it's just staggering. We're not talking about a couple of bombs that failed to go off. We're talking about more than 3,000 bombs landing in and around the temple, and not a single one of them exploded. The temple itself, not a scratch. And this is a perfect example of our central question. Through a scientific lens, you could say, well, sure, dud munitions. Bombs fail sometimes because of manufacturing errors. It happens. But through a spiritual lens, for 3,000 of them to fail, that's seen as a clear, direct act of divine protection by the goddess Tanot Mata herself. Now let's jump to another really powerful example. Back in 2013, during those horrific floods in the Himalayas, the ancient Kedarnath temple was right in the path of this absolute torrent of water, rock, and mud. And then, out of nowhere, a single gigantic boulder washed down and lodged itself perfectly right behind the temple, splitting the flow of water and saving the entire structure. So again, you have these two compelling ways of looking at it. Was it just a 1 in a million geological fluke, a random act of physics? Or was it a deliberate act of protection from Lord Shiva, a divine shield placed there to save his own ancient home? For millions, the answer is obvious. Okay, so we've talked about these huge, dramatic, one-off events, but what about mysteries that seem to defy the laws of physics, like every single day? These are things happening right out in the open for everyone to see. You know, if you go to the famous Jagannath temple in Puri, look up. There's a flag on top of the massive spire. And here's the weird thing. No matter which way the wind is blowing in from the sea, that flag always, and I mean always, flops in the opposite direction. It's just this constant, observable puzzle. So what's going on here? Could it be some kind of weird atmospheric quirk? Maybe a complex vortex of wind created by the temple's unique shape. Scientists think that's a possibility. But for devotees, the explanation is way more profound. They see it as a clear sign of divine power, a statement that spiritual authority is even greater than the laws of nature. All right, from the air, let's turn to water. Specifically, Gangajal, water from the sacred Ganges River. It's famous for something pretty amazing. It just doesn't seem to go bad. You can keep it in a container for years and it stays fresh, clear, and odor-free. And what's so cool about this one is that science actually has a pretty solid explanation. The water has a high mineral content and is full of these things called bacteriophages, which are basically viruses that kill bacteria. It's a natural self-cleaning system. But for devotees, that scientific fact doesn't diminish the miracle one bit. It's just the how, the mechanism behind the river's divine purity. All right, let's venture a little deeper now. We're moving into mysteries that are less about hard physical evidence and more about these incredible natural cycles and, well, personal experiences of something you just can't see. High up in the Himalayas, inside the Amarnath cave, something truly remarkable happens every single year. A stalagmite made of ice, which is revered as a sacred Shivlinga, forms naturally from water dripping from the cave ceiling. And get this, its size grows and shrinks in perfect sync with the phases of the moon. So scientifically, you can explain the process, right? Water drips, it's really cold, it freezes. Simple. But for the pilgrims who make that long, hard journey, the perfection of its shape and its precise timing with the moon, that feels much more divine than glacial. The fact that the miracle is so predictable is, weirdly, part of what makes it so mysterious. And for our final stop, we're going somewhere different. A place that's both beautiful and a little bit eerie. It's called Nidhivan, a dense forest in Vrindavan. The legend is that every single night, this is where Lord Krishna returns to perform his eternal dance. After the sun goes down, everyone, people, animals, everyone has to leave. No one is allowed to stay and watch. So what happens in the dark? Well, the stories are wild. People say that offerings of food left out in the evening are found half-eaten in the morning. Branches and plants look disturbed as if they've been brushed aside by dancers. And some even claim they hear faint music or the sound of ankle bells on the wind. It's all attributed to a spiritual presence that science, well, just can't measure. Okay, so we've looked at unexploded bombs, wind-defying flags, and dancing forests. What do we make of all of this? Why do these stories continue to have such an incredible grip on our imagination? And I think this is really the heart of the matter. For the millions of people who hold these stories dear, a scientific explanation doesn't cancel out the miracle. A geological fluke still can be the hand of Shiva. Bacteriophages can still be a divine blessing. The two ideas aren't fighting each other, they're just existing together. And at the end of the day, that's why these stories have such staying power. It's not really about whether you can prove them in a lab. Their real power is in their ability to inspire pure awe, to make faith stronger, and to give people a real, tangible connection to the divine. So, I'll leave you with this to think about. When you hear a story that just defies all logic, what's really giving it its power? Is it the hard, verifiable facts? Or is it the faith that rushes in to fill the gaps and gives those facts a deeper meaning?